Perfect. Okay. And Mr. Perello, just to clarify, Deputy District Attorney, would this be for San Diego?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm going to turn my sound up.
Mentioned I'm the head of our Elder Abuse Division.
Perfect. That will grab people's attention. You know that. All right. Thank you, Mayor Salas, for that information. And yes, when you leave your place, please cover your face. We are welcoming you back to our senior roundtable. And today's topic and discussion is about elder abuse / fraud. And with the times that we are facing today, it is a tough time for many families across the United States and across the globe. Today, we have two guests for you today, and one of them being Scott Perello, Deputy District Attorney for the City of San Diego. He is the head of elder abuse. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Perello.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we also have our chair for the Commission on Aging, Mr. Paul Crawford. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for having us.
Well, like we are discussing today, I think we see the many different scams, even prior to the pandemic, healthcare scams, telemarketing scams, the ones that are very frustrating. But today, because of our pandemic and what we're going through, Mr. Perello, if I may ask you, and we can get this started, what are the biggest concerns that our senior community should know within the County of San Diego of things that are happening right now with fraud?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Aaron. It's such an important message to get out. We know our elder population in San Diego is so vulnerable to these scammers, whether they're coming from in our own neighborhoods or coming from internationally by way of phone contact or email contact. And, you know, it's a terrible part of the human condition, right? That we're in the middle of a crisis and there's people out there waiting to seize and take advantage. And so we need to be extra vigilant during a time of crisis. I know you've previously talked to your community about the risks of isolation, and that's really, you know, the number one risk factor with all forms of elder abuse. And they're using the health crisis currently in order to target elders is in a few different ways that both the local and federal governments are warning our seniors about. The number one way is a specific contact that someone out there is offering testing for free, or a vaccination that doesn't exist, right? Or the opportunity to be paid in order to help with some sort of study. And so we even had a letter being distributed just this past week from a company saying that COVID-19 tests were mandatory for any Medi-Cal or Medicare recipients, and then, you know, forcing an elder to be scared enough to make a phone call to go get a test that obviously this lab would have to get paid to. So, you know, there's a lot of scams on the consumer protection side, and then we have to be aware of these scams where people are offering, you know, a testing, a vaccination. We have, you know, even something as simple as offering the personal protective equipment or masks. The bottom line is that it's the same advice we've been giving through the years on these scams. The best advice we could give our elders is, if you do not know the phone number that's calling you, do not answer the phone. If you don't recognize the person sending the email, you have to, in this day and age, assume that it's a scam.
One of the things that you mentioned and you touched on right there is that isolation can be, you know, that makes them the most vulnerable, because usually they can confide in somebody that can give them some friendly advice. And so when we talked about isolation, not only are they frustrated with having to stay at home, but with that, they can't rely on somebody at at a glance, or at arm's reach, because somebody's got to give them that advice. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because as we talked about checking in on our seniors that are in our lives, is making sure that we mention these things, because they can easily, with technology not being something that they grew up with, it's important for us to remind them of the things that unfortunate people will do, especially during these times. And I think the biggest one is financial, right? I think, like you mentioned, it's they want to receive a payment, for services that don't. And so with that, what do we see being the greatest threats for financial abuse right now?
Well, the greatest threat right now are these scams, and there's some very important things that everyone needs to know, right? And we talked about the nature of the scam, which is, someone offering a free coronavirus test. But the classic scams are still there, right? The IRS, the Social Security scam, and these scammers are so sophisticated already. They know that the government is offering checks now, right, with all these stimulus plans. And so they're seizing on that, and they're calling people, seniors specifically, and saying, hey, the IRS is sending you a check, right? Everyone sees this on the news. And so the senior is led to believe that this is legitimate. And then they're saying, well, we need your social security number if you want your check, or you need to pay us, $3,000 now to receive your $20,000 stimulus check. So they're preying on us, right? We're familiar with the grandpa scam, which, a lot of people laugh at when we say, yo, your granddaughter's in a jail in Tijuana. Right. Well, we've heard that the scammers are shifting the tone of that call now to suggest, hey, grandma, it's me. I'm stuck in a hospital. I've contracted the coronavirus and I'm so sick and I need some money. So it's the same theme, right, of the call. What the message we need to get out there is this: how are the scammers getting the money from our seniors? And that's the message we need to know. That's the immediate red flag. Gift cards, believe it or not, is the number one method that the scammers are getting money from our seniors. So they convince the senior that they have to, they owe the IRS money, or they owe the Social Security Administration money. And then in order to get paid, they send the senior usually to one of the big retail stores to buy $500, $1,000 gift cards. And it's real simple. Once they have the gift card, there's a code on the back that they can scratch off and pull that money right off the card. So that's a huge red flag. The bottom line is that gift cards should never be used for payment, right? Because you could just write a check or something. So that's an automatic red flag that our seniors and anyone who has access, right, our family members, to know about. And believe it or not, the scammers have already evolved beyond gift cards, and they're actually getting money using cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And you might say, oh, I don't have to worry about that. My grandmother can't even, use a CD player or a computer. How's she going to get Bitcoin? The scammers walk you through in just a few minutes how to set it up right on your laptop, and then transfer money from your online banking into something like a Coinbase account or something like that. So the scammers are real sophisticated, and we need to be extra vigilant. It goes back to the isolation that you talked about. We have to check in more, right? We have to check in, because the more someone's isolated, the more vulnerable they're going to be to fall for one of these scams.
Right. And the important message here to do today is also, besides checking in on them more and more, is look at, give them the information, give them examples. What we need to have are examples of people. And I know that it's extremely embarrassing to be a victim of one of these. Anybody, it doesn't matter your age, would be embarrassed about falling for something like this. But since, the scammers, they're ahead of us, right? They're with us with technology. We need to give examples. So that's great information, Mr. Perello, because when we go back to let the senior in our life know. We want to give them specific examples because, we want to trigger their, hey, this is something that I heard and I better not fall for this. And, the basics too. Don't be giving away your bank account, your personal information over the phone. That needs to be done um, some way different. And one of the things I catch myself is as we're trying to teach our senior population how, with our tech gap, bridging that tech gap is, hey, use this app. And guess what? We need to give out some private information. So, it's a tough subject, but, those are great examples. And Commissioner Crawford, you being in the banking world yourself, and in talking about the financial struggles that we find ourselves with, and having to explain some of the abuse that is just out there and the scammers. What are some things that you see along your lines to kind of piggyback off of what Mr. Perello has mentioned?
In the financial industry, you're going to see a lot of cases of elder abuse and financial exploitation. This is part of the training for every banker, every frontline person at each branch to tackle the issue of the signs that they see. And as we've already mentioned already, social isolation is a health epidemic. It in itself is a pre-existing condition, and it seems like these scammers or viruses trying to attack our seniors in the community. And so when you get the training and you understand the cues, what are the common scams going on, the best approach you could do is ask questions. Asking questions and knowing the signs of scams or exploitation allow you to dig deeper into what makes sense. And it allows the senior to talk to someone about it. They may not want to talk to you directly about why they're doing it, but once you get to the bottom of it, having that discussion, it really opens their eyes. Because as we've mentioned, when it comes to the grandparent scheme, you're in a state of hysteria or panic, trying to figure out, oh my gosh, I didn't know I had a grandchild that needs help. And now using the coronavirus as a way to assist this supposed family member, these are things that you don't think about at the moment, especially when you're someone who's not expecting it. And so for us in the financial industry, we take extra precautions and ask the questions. And as it evolves as well, we also evolve in knowing what to look for. And I remember back in the day when Western Union was the common scam. Not to say that it isn't anymore, but now we're in the digital age, and while seniors might have a digital gap between them and the younger generation, as we've discussed, these scammers know step by step, and to the point where they can send us a basic email with a link, tell you to click it, you're done. All your information is stolen. You had any online banking or any accounts on your computer or anywhere on a cloud, that's taken. So hard to recover from that, especially as a senior who's already trying to save their money, or maybe not have as much money as they had, but now it's gone. To recover from that is really difficult. And when you send money out, it's hard to get back. Regulations there is no way to get that money back. So we have to do our best to see the signs. What are the cues? What are the questions to ask? It's a struggle, but we have to do our part.
Well, like Mr. Perello mentioned, the sophistication behind some of the scammers now is that I assume that a gift card is pretty hard to trace after it's given out. So I can understand, the reason why they've adapted to that. So, gentlemen, I could ask you both, what are some things that we can mention to our senior population and to the families at home that have a loved one that falls to that category? Is what is the best way that they can protect themselves from all of these things?
Well, I would, I gave some advice earlier specifically to the scams. If you don't know the phone number, just don't pick up the phone. And that's a difficult temptation, especially when we're sitting home 24 hours a day waiting for some human interaction. But that's really plainly the best advice we can get. It goes back to the old adage, if it's too good to be true, then it is too good to be true. But I also want to specifically tell, because we've talked about financial abuse, there's also more vulnerability for people during this crisis that are isolated at home with someone who might be at risk, right? And we're talking about things a little more uncomfortable when it comes to physical abuse. You know, most of our perpetrators that we prosecute are family members. They're family members who are dealing with some mental health issues or some drug or alcohol issues. And so this is a call to the entire community of how we can protect our seniors better, which is to be vigilant. If you're concerned of your neighbor because of the son or grandson or daughter or granddaughter that they live with that you just have an uneasy feeling about, or you're seeing concerning behavior, call Adult Protective Services. It's never been more important than now. This is different than calling the police. You don't have to see a crime taking place. You just have to have concern, a suspicion that something might be going on. And the phone number here in San Diego is 1-800-339-4661. You could be anonymous. So if you are concerned about a neighbor or your aunt or your uncle or your grandparents and you're far away or you're not exactly sure, maybe you're concerned even about one of your own siblings because they're living at home with your grandma or grandpa or your parents, call Adult Protective Services. They're an amazing agency. They're working in the county as essential workers. They're out exposing themselves to risk to make sure our seniors are safe. And that is the best any of us can do in the community is to call and to get one of these alarming situations on the map, as they say, or, you know, on the grid so that someone has eyes on the situation.
Absolutely. You bring up a great point of, you know, I think that's a duty that we have as community leaders and as a community and as a neighbor, that we need to be very vigilant as to what is going on in our surroundings. And please, I know that we don't want to interrupt anything. We don't want to be a burden. A lot of what our seniors feel today, but we need to do that right now. I think we got to think about the caretakers, the caregivers. Unfortunately, when we talk about abuse, sometimes it's that person that you felt that you trusted the most. I think the important thing is to be vigilant, you know, check in, make it a point to check in, because somebody who is unfortunately being a victim of this isn't going to be, you know, screaming it out. You know, that is something that it's our job. And, you know, as a mandated reporter myself with children, it goes up to this level. So that is a great point. I think the message is you need to just check in on that person, and you might be saving somebody's life. So that is a great point. Do you have any other anything you wanted to add, Commissioner Crawford?
Absolutely. Talking about elder abuse and fraud, they are still dark figures in a lot of the statistics. And as we're talking about vigilance, it takes a village to help out. We have seniors in the community that do not have family members that they can confide to about whom they're speaking with or whom is taking care of them. That raises a concern. So I say this to everyone in the community and not just seniors. We got to do our part to make sure our seniors are safe. This is still an ongoing issue where seniors are still being targeted. If you see something, say something. A phone number to Adult Protective Services was already mentioned. Please write it down. These are things that we need to keep track of. There's nothing wrong with reporting something you think is suspicious. Some figures come from homes, skilled nursing, assisted living. These are also of concern. If you're a family member that might be out of state and you know your parent is in an assisted living facility, do your best to keep in touch, because any sign you hear in someone's voice or through video, that could help you save their lives, save them financially, save them physically from any abuse that's being done when you're not there to help out. And I want to just make sure that we're perfectly clear that any literature or correspondence on elder abuse is also targeting the loved ones that need to watch out for that.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you both. I think the information that we discussed today is important. I think the bottom line was, you know, when we think of scams and abuse, we immediately think of financial. And, you know, that's been going on for quite some time. It's great to hear specific examples of how sophisticated and modern the scammers have gotten. Because we need to use those examples as we're sharing it to our population. And I know that in senior living homes, they are confined to their own room, which makes them the most vulnerable, right? Because they're just not aware of some of these things. So it's our duty to be able to provide that. So, Mr. Perello, your examples were dead on. We appreciate that. Mr. Crawford, thanks for joining us as always, helping our senior community. Gentlemen, any last words to our city residents here?
I just wanted to thank you, Aaron, on behalf of the District Attorney Summer Steffen, who is, elder abuse is one leading cause.
Right.
It's just great to have the opportunity to talk to any part of the community, whether in South Bay or anywhere else in the county. So thank you for getting the message out. It's such important information during this crisis. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And we're going to be sharing the number that Deputy District Attorney Mr. Perello mentioned. We'll be putting that on the screen. That is a very important thing to consider. And I think as we had talked in our previous episodes, as we talk about checking in on our seniors, that seems to be the common trend is checking in on them, making sure that they have enough food, that they are staying engaged and active, that we call them, because as they feel isolated, our mental health is so important and we need to go back and check on them. I know that as we're calling our seniors more and more, it went from needing the bare essentials to just having a 10-minute conversation because that's what they needed. And so with that, we can also talk about some of these scams that we're hearing are going on, and we need to protect them. And I think that is our duty. And I think that was the bottom line as we're checking in on our seniors, that we're making sure that we protect them from all of these things that are going on. And we assure them that we will get through this. And with that, we'll be stronger. So thank you both for joining me today. And please catch us next week on our next episode for the Senior Roundtable for the City of Chula Vista. See you later.